replenishment and the Sawtooth model. We are going to discuss how most supply chains function and show it in a visual format known as Sawtooth. Before we get started, let's quickly review the three types of levels that are commonly used in VHA. First, you have the normal stock level, which is the largest quantity of an item to be maintained in a given inventory point. According to the Procurement and Logistics Office Guidebook, also known as One Book, this should be set to no more than 7 to 15 days for prime vendor items or 15 to 30 days for standard items. Next, we have the standard reorder point, which is the quantity of an item when replenishment should occur and is generally 50% of the normal stock level. And then last, we have the emergency stock level, which is the lowest quantity of an item in an inventory point and is used generally to alert staff that an emergency purchase may be required. And this is usually set somewhere around 20% of the normal stock level. We're going to discuss what is commonly referred to as the Sawtooth model. As we begin this demonstration, we're going to have an imaginary expendable item and we're going to make some assumptions. First, we're going to say that usage is constant at 624 each per year. This averages out to about 52 per month or 12 per week. Now we all know that there are very few items that have constant usage, and most of them look something like this. This item averages 52.68 each per month, but it dips and climbs from month to month. And here's another example. This item averages 51.31, but it is also not constant. For our demonstration, our item's usage is going to look more like this. Usage is going to be straight across the board at 52 for the last 12 to 13 months. We're also going to assume that the item's never used on Sunday, and for replenishment purposes, we're going to say that we currently have one full month supply on hand and there is no lead time. And we'll talk more about that later, but for now we'll say lead time is the amount of time between when an order is placed and when it is received. Also, this is not a prime vendor item, so per the One Book, we are going to need to keep 30 days of stock on hand. So here we have a graph that will demonstrate how the principle of Sawtooth works. The line across the top represents our normal stock level of 52 each, or 1 month's usage. The left side of the box shows the quantity on hand at any given time, and the bottom is going to be filled in with the day that will be represented. Our goal is to never let the quantity on hand reach all the way to the bottom, as this means we will have a stock out. And as most of you know, stockouts are just about the worst thing that can happen to a medical supply chain. It'll force you to take drastic measures to find more, which usually lead to increased costs. It creates a lack of confidence in logistics by our customers, and it could result in something far worse if a patient needs a supply item that isn't there. And if you're like me, you've probably always pictured your inventory looking something kind of like this, sort of fluid and wavy. And the reason for this is probably because you stare at these all day. Now, this is the usage graph, and the usage graph in GIP doesn't show quantity on hand. It shows monthly usage over a 1-year period. So we're going to look at what a day-to-day inventory movement should look like. So we're back to our example. Let's say that 2 days have passed, and one of them was a Sunday, and now we've used 2 each items. So we've gone from 52 down to 50. Another day passes, and we were down to 48. After day 4, we're down to 46. After day 5, we're down to 44. Day 6, we're at 42. And day 7, in week 1, we have used a total of 12, like it says here, and we are down to 40. I'm going to speed this up so you can see this transition over weeks rather than days. So after week 2, we've used another 12, and we're down to 28. After week 3, we're down to 16. And after week 4, or month 1, we have used another 12, and we are down to 4. Because there's no lead time, this is when we would reorder. And when we do, this line representing our quantity on hand goes all the way back up to our normal stock level. So at this point, we once again have a full stock. So to make this a little easier to see over a long period of time, we're going to change this bottom here from days to weeks. So for the first 4 weeks, we're moving along using exactly what we expect. We get down to 4, we hit our standard reorder point, which is set that way because we have no lead time and it will arrive tomorrow. And this is called one order cycle. When we do that, the stock gets replenished, and we do it all over again. We have another order cycle. Now let's say that 1 month comes and we have a problem. We're going along just fine as usual. We hit our reorder point of 4, and we are expecting to be able to go ahead and just order as usual, and it'll come in and we'll go back up to full stock. However, this month, when we call the order, we speak to Bill from Willie's Wide World of Widgets, And he informs us that he is trying to decrease overhead and will be keeping less inventory on hand. He also tells us that there will now be a 1 week period from when we order to when we receive the item. This means we will now be getting the item here, and as a result, we have 1 week where we have no widgets, and this leads to a stock out. So now we have what is called lead time, and that's, again, the amount of time between when an order is placed and when it is received. And we have to figure that into our normal stock level. So what do? The first thing we do is to raise our standard reorder point to 16, which would be 1 week away from where we had been ordering. And here's a formula that we can use to remember this. So demand times lead time equals your standard reorder point. In our example, we'll use weeks, and we'll say that we use 12 each per week times the 1 week lead time plus 4, which is where we had been ordering before, equals 16. So now our new standard reorder point is going to be 16. And by increasing this, we can make up for this lead time, and then when we reorder, it comes in on time. So the next month, we are back on track, and we're using it as we were, and all is right with the world. We hit 16, we reorder again, and we're good. So now we have that figured out, and we're good, right? Well, not quite. So let's say we have another month of normal usage. We go through the same number, we hit our reorder point, and we reorder with lead time in mind. Now we start the next month and all is going well, but somewhere around week 2, something happens. A nurse comes in and takes all the rest of our widgets. Now, you have your 1 week lead time to get more, which leaves you with yet another stock out. Now, the first time you had a stock out, you explained the situation, you were able to beg, borrow, and plead to find enough to get by. But now you have another one, and the rest of the nurses don't care what this one did. They just want their items. So after meeting with your service chief and facility leadership about this new stockout trend that you seem to have, you think you have it figured out. So you start again with 52 each on the shelf, and then something else happens. What the nurse who took all the widgets didn't bother to tell you is that the reason the widgets were taken was because a new doctor had been hired, and she was trained to use twice as many widgets as all of the other doctors. So you'll notice that the tooth, if you will, is now skinnier, and 52 each is only going to last for 2 weeks. And this also means that 16 is not going to be enough to cover the 1 week lead time, which means that we have another stockouts. So how do we overcome this? Well, common practice in supply chains of all kinds is to have what is known as safety stock. And usually this is a quantity of an item that is segregated in some way, like a separate bin or a bag, and if someone has to put these items into use, it becomes a visual cue that it needs to be ordered again as soon as possible. In the VA, we use what's known as the emergency stock level in a similar way, and this X will represent that. So when we use items and we hit our standard reorder point, and then we hit our emergency stock level, this is one order cycle. So you'll notice in this example that the emergency stock level is now where the standard reorder point used to be, and we have moved the standard reorder point up to the 2 week range. We did this because the emergency stock level is at the 1 week point, or 16 in this case, and so we add that to our previous formula. So let's look at that. So now we have demand times lead time plus safety stock equals our standard reorder point, or 12 each times 1 week, which is 12, plus 16 each, which is our safety stock, equals 28 each, which is our standard reorder point. And we do this for a couple of additional months. And you can see why this is called the sawtooth. The safety stock represents our blade, if you will, and then each tooth represents the varying quantity on hand that we have at any given time. And so we have these little teeth here. So let's take a look at how safety stock can help us. Let's go back to our new doctor example, and let's say that we reorder, and we get back to our normal stock level, and then demand increases, as it did before. Now we've hit our normal stock level in 1 week. We've hit it at the 4 week point rather than the 5 week point. And so we reorder accordingly. And even though our usage has, or our quantity on hand has dipped down into our safety stock, we still never reach the bottom, and we get our new stock in on time. And so as long as we don't hit this bottom, we aren't going to have a stock out, and no one will know that anything is wrong. So we need to make our adjustments, of course, to make sure that we don't do this every month, but at least for this one, we are safe because we had safety stock. So here's one last look at our Sawtooth diagram. We talked about our normal stock level, which is the largest quantity of an item to be maintained in a given inventory point. And again, that's about 30 days for non-prime vendor items or 15 days for prime vendor items. We spent a lot of time discussing the standard reorder point, which in VA terms is the quantity of an item when replenishment should occur, and it's generally 50% of your normal stock level. And then we talked about emergency stock level and a related term of safety stock. The emergency stock level is the lowest quantity of an item in an inventory point and is used to alert staff that an emergency purchase may be required. And generally speaking, it's 20% of the normal stock level. And that is the end of this presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to your instructor.